Saida Desilets. She has a PhD in transformational psychology. She comes from Canada. She teaches all over the world. She is an opinion leader in the subject of healthy relationship and healthy sex education. That's why I'm interviewing her. Welcome in Holland, in Amsterdam, in the Hogeschool van Amsterdam.
Okay. Thank you. It's really wonderful to be here with you.
Good. How can you describe yourself, who you are?
Currently I'm describing myself as a global thought leader in the movement of women's sexual empowerment. I'm also an author, and I also just am a visionary in holding the vision for the birth of sexual sovereignty around the globe.
Wow. I would like to talk with you about the healthy relationship education curriculum, actually, because it's my goal to think about relationships lessons in school. But first of all, I'd like to talk with you about what you think is a healthy relationship.
It's a very good question, because we have no current role models of healthy relationship. So let's start with what it's not. So most relationships is what I call a beggar relationship. It's where we believe we need to find our other half. We believe that we're completed by someone else. We look for fulfillment through relationship. In this kind of approach, we always tend to bargain for love or bargain for sex. We give away a little bit too much of ourselves. We're not willing to really stand for what's important because we're afraid of losing that relationship. So a gourmet relationship or a healthy relationship would involve two whole people coming together and offering each other the abundance of the attributes that they've developed in themselves versus looking for fulfillment through the other. They are already fulfilled and they're just looking to celebrate. So this involves a person who no longer bargains. They're willing to speak their truth without blame or shame. They're willing to be creative and take responsibility for what's actually happening in the relationship. They understand that the relationship is actually the coming together or the equation of what two people bring to it versus something that's happening to them or they have no control or power over. And it's, for me, a gourmet relationship first begins with yourself. So you really cannot have healthy relationship with another human being if you don't have it for yourself. And the basic level is just plain respect. Do you deeply respect yourself? Can you honestly look at yourself and just accept what's there? If you can, that easily translates to another person. And to maintain gourmet relationship takes responsibility, and it takes creativity and enthusiasm and the willingness to grow and mature as a human being. So it's quite a beautiful path, actually. But if you think about gourmet, how many gourmet restaurants are there in the world compared to drive-through restaurants? That's huge. So right there you can see the difference. Beggar relationships are like drive-through relationships or fast food relationships. You get them quick and you lose them quick, and they're really not that healthy and nurturing for you. Gourmet relationship, they come around maybe less often. You have to wait maybe a little bit more, but the ingredients are more refined, they're more organic and delicious, and they're put together very beautifully. And they're given, instead of an empty bowl saying, please fill me, they're given as a gourmet plate of food saying, would you like some? And if the person says, no, you're fine with it, you're like, that's okay, I'm enjoying my own plate of food. And if you do, it's like, fantastic. And then you offer me the same, you offer me your gourmet plate, and together we have this abundance of offerings.
You have this plate of beautiful things, huh? But sometimes we also have this dark shadow, these difficult things. You also offer them on your plate?
No. So here's the deal. Relationship is not meant to be a workshop. You shouldn't be workshopping the other person or yourself.
Workshop means?
Workshop means working at something. It means trying techniques like, for example, nonviolent communication techniques, or whatever techniques you learn in the world to make something better. Yeah. You don't want to do that to each other. So what I can do though...
Why not? Because they say love is a verb.
It ruins relationships.
Really?
I can tell you that right away. Why gourmet relationship is actually really fantastic is it invites us into a maturity process. It invites us to really love our human aspects, which are the things that are not always perfect, right? Mm-hmm. We do get angry, we get afraid, we have shame, we have all these things. It's very human. And by falling in love with those things, we can own them. And when I own them, I can reveal them to you as an offering, but not as an expectation that you're going to take it and resolve it or make it better. Mm-hmm. So I come to you and I'm like, hey, this is what's real. I'm a sensitive person. I have these likes, I have these dislikes. I've developed this much. I'm immature in this way. Here's what I am. That's my offering. It does
right from the start.
Right from the start. And the reason I can do that is because I have that relationship with myself. I accept myself as I am, and because I do, I don't have shame around saying, hey, you know.
Did you already have that when you were 18?
No. I had really shitty relationships. I had to learn, and in my process of learning involved first pushing away other people and coming to have a real relationship with myself and starting to be honest with myself.
Okay, so you prefer that the relationship is authentic?
Yes,
that's
100%
100%. Yeah, but sometimes we hate ourselves and we hope somebody else would love us.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
No.
Because if I hate myself and I want you to love me, I actually can't receive your love. I'm always going to be suspicious that it's going to go away, or there's a reason for it, or you looked at somebody else more lovingly than you looked at me. That is a beggar relationship. And because our society, the way we do relationship, is very immaturely. We don't have healthy role models, so we're actually pioneering a whole new way of relating, and we need it. The world needs more mature, emotional people relating with each other. And when you start relating from that gourmet place, it's fantastic. It's
That's your experience.
Real. Yes. I need to see myself as powerful. I need to start seeing other people as powerful. And when I'm thinking of you're powerful, whatever you share with me, it doesn't matter because you're powerful. And I know that you're going to be okay. And I trust you, and I trust your process. If I think that you're a victim, that you're not okay, that I have to resolve something, I have to save you, it's very stressful for me because I want to do it right. And so this is where difficulties end up happening in a relationship. We tend to parent each other instead of actually relating as two adults. It's important to have the vision of what's possible.
Absolutely. Because
the current vision of relationship we see in soap operas and movies and the media, and to be honest, I don't find them very inspiring.
No, they're boring.
So we need to hold a greater vision and a greater capacity and love what shows up. Oh gosh, look, I just screwed up again. Okay. And admitting, you know what, I'm sorry, I just screwed up again. This is my pattern. I'm going to do better. I'm going to make an effort. And that human quality of being real, I don't know, there's more, we give each other more space a little bit around that.
Yeah. Do you think this thing should be learned at school?
Yes. I think there's a couple things in the regular curriculum of school that is missing. And one is the understanding that we are extremely social creatures. And so a teacher has an incredible opportunity to imprint, because it's through something called limbic imprinting and limbic resonance. Limbic is part of the mammalian mind, mammalian brain. And so all mammals have this capacity. We have this resonant capacity. And so we influence each other. And so a teacher has a great deal of influence, a counselor, anyone in a position of authority or power or guiding has a lot of influence, including our parents. So as a teacher, it's really important to understand that you are imprinting every child in that room with how you do life. And so if how you do life is poor relationships and shut down sexuality and just unexpressed and you're miserable, this is being imprinted to the kids. Whether or not you say anything about it, they get it as an imprint. So because we're social creatures, and because it's so important that we actually shift how we start to relate to each other as human beings, yes, I do believe it's very important to begin the process of showing children how to communicate honestly and clearly without blame or judgment, how to actually understand their own needs, how to have empathy and really hear someone else, the art of listening and the art of speaking. These things are really essential because we're such social creatures.
Isn't it something that should be primarily being taught by the parents?
It is primarily being taught by parents, whether or not the parents want this role. The parents are imprinting their children. But in a school setting, a teacher has a phenomenal opportunity to make things right. So even if the child's home life isn't great, they're spending a lot of hours in a day with this one teacher or several teachers. And so this is ideal opportunity to re-imprint the kids with how to speak to someone respectfully, how to really listen to them, all these kind of basic human ways of relating. I think a teacher, it should be part of how they understand their message going out on a daily basis.
In Holland, we have the feeling that a relationship is individual. Having a relationship is something personal, private. So it should not be taught at school, you have to learn it by life.
Right.
What do you think about that?
For me, it's a both-and answer. Absolutely, it's an individual path. No one can tell you how to live, what's right, what's wrong. Only you can define that for yourself. Absolutely. But the thing is, we're not islands. We're interrelational beings. And so everything around you, whether it's a work setting, your family setting, your friends, are having influence on who you are and how you're relating. So in school, there is an opportunity, even if it's a small opportunity, think about it, but the teachers themselves understood their own influence. Just by being who they are and relating to the kids in a slightly different way, maybe from more of a compassionate space or a more, I don't know what it is, the kind of space that would enable children to get that, hey, I'm worth something, and this person sees me as powerful and my feelings are valid, and what I need to share, my truth, is being heard.
So that's the starting point from authenticity, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And this we can teach without it having to be a lesson in how to be authentic. This is taught by the living experience of the teacher. The most simple thing is to understand this. We're either operating from a place where we don't feel complete, so we're incomplete, something's missing, something's not good, or we're operating from a place where we feel whole and complete. And when we're in that place where we're feeling not whole, we are often trying to get energy. And our ways of getting energy might be that we throw a temper tantrum, or we get angry, or we get quiet, or we have these patterns that force people to pay attention to us and give us energy. And so that if we could show the kids that this particular pattern isn't healthy and that there's a different way for them to get energy, to get noticed, to get loved. And it comes from being complete. It comes from understanding that you're okay as you are. This would be huge to really help kids move forward in their maturity process, at least emotionally.
But for that you have to first practice this thing yourself.
Yes, I think if this was being taught, then the facilitator would need to obviously understand this and live it themselves and have this sort of benevolent joy about how silly and crazy our human relating can be, and just have this love of that, and be able to, in a very gentle way, show that there's more to the picture than what we know. And if you really look at kids, all of school is about relating. It's very little about subject matter. It's very, very social. Whether or not you want to admit it, it's an extremely social space. And some kids are left out of the social circles, some are the popular ones. There's all kinds of peer pressure, especially when you get into teenage years with all the crazy hormones that are running through their bodies. This is even more evident. And so if we can set the stage for a little bit more healthy relating, where we're teaching the kids, you don't have to bargain for love, you don't have to bargain for sexuality, you can express your needs. If nobody likes you, it's okay because you like yourself. These kinds of very simple but yet profound behaviors would set the person for a very good adult experience.
Now we come to the subject of sex education.
Okay.
What is it now, actually, in your country, your home country? How is it given at this moment, and what you think it should be?
Well, I'll speak for the United States because that's where I've been for the last 10 years. It's really polarized. There are some schools where they're very forward-thinking and they bring Planned Parenthood, these sort of sex ed programs into the schools, and there are schools that are completely anti-sexual education. They want nothing. And so there's this very strong polarity happening. But one thing for sure, statistically, in the world, if you look where sex ed is offered, where it's very good, there's less teenage pregnancies and less STIs. Actually, Holland is one of those prime examples for the rest of the world going, well, look what Holland's doing. So I think they're doing a good job in that sense. But what's lacking for me is right now what we're teaching the kids is what I call a functional model of sexuality. And it's how the doctors deal with it and the therapists deal with it, and pretty much everyone deals with sexuality is a functional model. This body part does this thing, these hormones do that thing. So you're really looking at a mechanistic type model. But sexuality to a human being isn't just a doing aspect. It's not just body parts doing certain things. There's a deeper purpose to sexuality. And sexuality has a profound meaning to a human being. And by understanding that there's a greater meaning to it, a greater purpose, a greater intent to sexuality, we need to change a little bit how we teach sexual education. So we're not just saying, these are all the diseases, these are all the body parts, this is what happens when they come together.
This is how you use a condom.
Yes, but we also teach you are a human being, your heart partakes in this experience, who you are as an emotional creature partakes in this experience. For example, women's pelvises are extremely refined and very, very attuned and delicate. So they're very sensitive to the environment, to criticism, to fear, to all of these things. It affects the function of the pelvis, but it affects it through an emotional imprint.
Actually, when you are in Holland at age of 11, you get sex education. It's merely biological. Any advice, what information should not be left out?
Yeah. That your body is beautiful, it's precious, that pleasure is part of your natural intelligence. These pieces are very important because at 11 you're just at that crux of changing hormonally, and you want to understand your body where you get to delight in her or him instead of feeling afraid of what's coming, because a lot of girls now are starting to get their menstrual cycles younger and younger. So to establish, at least in that primary education of sexuality, your body is healthy and beautiful exactly as it is, and there's a preciousness to it, there's a sacredness to it. I don't know if they want to use that word, but whatever word they can replace that implies
your body is a temple.
It's important, and you know, it's valuable. That would be a start. It would definitely be a good start to help the kids feel better about their own bodies.
From what age do you think children should learn about sex?
It really is individual, because some children are very sexual, like I was from birth. And then I know some other kids, they don't even discover their sexuality till they're teens. So I think what's needed is a sensitivity so that when the child is ripe and they ask a question, the question isn't met with shame or embarrassment. It's met with, oh great, you're here. Well, here's the information. They need to actually understand how their body functions, how they relate to themselves, how good it is to have a body. And when they know this, their sexual relationships become much more fulfilling, and they themselves become much more expressed and have access to their potential as a human being. And there's a lot of studies showing this now, but we're still not teaching this to kids. And so that's...
Why is that? Because I was wondering, where you come from, it looks like a very liberated Western idea of sexuality. But here in Holland we have so many cultures living together, going to the same school. Like in one classroom you can have 20 cultures.
Yeah.
How would you deal with those things as a teacher?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So first of all, we need to present things in such a way where we personally don't have a charge. So if the presenter has issues around sexuality or isn't uncomfortable with the topic, they should not be teaching it. Mm-hmm. That's primary because of that limbic imprint. I have been able to speak to people from all different religious backgrounds, all of them. I have been able to speak to all ages, from as young as 11 years old up to the mid-80s, about sexuality. And because I'm comfortable, because there's not a charge around the subject matter, suddenly they say, oh, I feel relaxed about having this discussion.
I just read a scientific report about this thing, that the teenage kids say, we want a teacher on this subject only if he's comfortable with the subject.
Exactly, because it's already uncomfortable enough for the kids to be talking about it with an adult. So if the adult's uncomfortable as well, then you've got this double discomfort. So if you remember that limbic resonance, who you are is affecting everyone in the room. If you come in that room and your sole purpose there is to educate and let these young people know how sexuality works, and that it's a human birthright to have it, and that it comes with responsibility. So these three things, and if you do that in a benevolent way, I don't think you're going to offend anyone.
But some people from some cultures, for instance, don't want kids to know about sexuality. They think it's ridiculous that in Holland we tell things when they're 11, because then it's the time to have fun and play football outside. They should know about these things. And also when they're 15, 16, they think it's not yet time, it should be only...
Okay, well those are definitely true statements for some parents, but what those parents need to understand is their children have access to the internet. And any kid with a cell phone or a computer is learning about sex. Yeah, and they're learning about sex from a pornographic way. They're learning about sex in a degrading way. The children are being educated. They're being educated by the people around them, the magazines around them, the media, their friends. They're obviously, if they're going to school, there's older kids. So you're always overhearing things and seeing behaviors. And so all of this has an impact on a child, and for me, I think it would be excellent to give an opportunity to a child to understand their body in a healthy way, to understand sexual relationship in a healthy way, without having the need to get overly graphic with the kids. Okay. You don't have to get graphic. I think that's what we're afraid of in sex ed, is this graphic behavior, these graphic things. And in all honesty, parents should not be teaching kids about sex.
No?
No. In cultures that have healthy relationships with sexuality in the culture, it's the aunt and the uncle that teach the kids, because it's almost too close to home when it comes from mother or comes from father. So mother and father can only take the child to a certain place, but there's an understanding in the psyche of the child, it's not right for me to hear this from this person. And so they push that away. They don't want to really hear. So it's important that that the kids have older friends or aunt or uncle that's healthy, that could also talk to them about this. It's a sensitive subject, and yet it's at the core of all human beings. Whether you ignore sexuality or you're into sexuality, it's always there. Yeah. So we either play ignorant, and for example, if we played ignorant with car driving, we'd hurt each other. Sure. We have to learn how to drive those cars.
Sometimes I think the ignorancy and not telling things, it's like neglect. It's almost like neglect.
Yes.
Like we pretend it's not around, but it is.
But the problem that we're having now is that it's a modern world, the kids have access to everything, so you cannot avoid what's going on. Plus, a lot of kids are suffering from either sexual abuse right at home, and that's confusing, or sexual abuse just close to home. Could be a neighbor, could be I don't know, an uncle or a cousin. And those kids need to understand that's not okay, but this is okay. This is the ugly side of sexuality, but there is a beautiful side of sexuality. And we tend to only focus on the ugly side of things. And even then, there's no outlet for the kids who need to understand, well, what just happened to me? It feels horrible. An outlet for those kids to be able to come forward and say that wasn't okay, and how do I reclaim my body now that I feel like it's been violated?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. I think what could really help is also having a parent-teacher meeting around sexuality. And it might be individual, because I think sometimes parents meet with the teacher individually. And just having the teacher kind of tuning into what's the home environment around sexuality, because that will give you a lot of insight on the behavior of the child. So if it's a very unhappy situation at home, that child, and the parent says, no, you can't have sexual education, it's too bad, really, because that child is going to suffer. They're not getting the education they need, and the education they are getting at home is an imprint that sex is violent or relationships horrible or whatever it is. So I don't know if it's possible to provide a little bit of just a conversation even with the parents and saying, you know, these programs are designed so that your child can be completely functional as an adult, and we're not teaching them how to have sex, we're teaching them how to relate in a healthy way, and that sexuality is a part of that. But we're not actually teaching them sexual positions or how to give blowjobs, or, you know, that's not what we mean by sexual education. But we want your child to have every asset that they could possibly have to have a good life. And how do you feel about that? And start opening up the conversation. And a lot of parents, I think, would want their child to have a good life. So it's a difficult thing, because if the adults themselves aren't happy and they're not healthy, that's why, in my esteem, there needs to be a parent-child program where the parent is equally learning simultaneously as the child, so that the values that are learned by the child are not destroyed by the values that are in place in the parental behavior. Because what's happening often when children are teenagers is the mother-fathers are also going through a hormonal change. It's a very difficult change for both. Both the kids and the parents are shifting. And so for the parents to understand what's going on in their own bodies, what's happening in their own hormones, what's happening in their own lives, and then understanding the huge impact and influence they're having on the life of their child. And instead of creating animosity between parent-child, they start to regard each other as allies. And I've done programs like this before, and they've been very successful, because the child stops seeing the parent as some aggressor or someone they need to fight against, and they start to see their mother or father as a human being that has needs, that is also afraid, that is going through their things. And so they form this ally relationship. And when you're an ally with somebody, you're looking out for the best in them. You're having discussions that are different, and you're teaching the parents how to communicate with a child in a way that's not disempowering or disrespectful. Because unfortunately, you know, relationship sexuality is at the foundation of how humans function, and yet it's the last thing we educate people on.
How did school give you sex education, actually? What's your experience when you were a child?
I was 12 years old, and I remember the afternoon like it was yesterday, and there was so much discomfort in the room. And I remember how intensely disappointed I was, because I was extremely sexual with myself. I'd been orgasmic since birth, and there were no answers to my internal questions. I was too shy to ask them externally, but the program was just, it's this body part, you put the condom like this, and you get pregnant if that happens, you know. And there was really nothing on pleasure, nothing on delighting in my own body, nothing on even just the difficulties of having a menstrual cycle more on an emotional level. It wasn't talked about. So I felt very disappointed, and I remember going, yeah, whatever, these adults are retarded, and trying to get my own information with whatever means was available to me, which wasn't enough. So my best education came from having friends in their 20s, and I would just ask point-blank questions.
When you were 12?
When I was 12,
14?
I had older friends. And I was like, okay, what happens when this, you know, what's going on here? And getting real answers. And I think we used to live more as a little bit more tribally, where we had access to different age groups and different friends and different mentors. And I think kids need mentors, healthy mentors, and mentors that really teach them beauty and self-responsibility and expression.
And that's lucky when you have healthy mentors.
Yes, it's
I
rare.
have some sick mentors.
Yes, but you know, hopefully, as we put these messages out more and more, we create a change, we create a shift, and maybe the kids, like I was, you become an advocate for a voice. So you had asked, what should teens know about? So not just the functional bit, not just the relational bit, because that's essential, but also the pleasure part of sexuality. We need to let kids know how to be good lovers, and we're not. And so at that age, kids are looking, and because there's no information, they're going to porn, and porn is one of the worst things to really understand pleasure, how to be sensual, how to enjoy each other's presence. And we're not just talking about intercourse, we're talking the whole act of sensuality between two people. There's no mention of this, and it's so important because it would save a lot of, I deal with the adults that come from not being educated, and they are suffering in their adult life, in their relationships, because they were never taught about sensuality, the importance of slowing things down, the importance of having skill as a lover, what does that mean? So when I've been privileged to teach young men, they're curious, how do we do this and how do we do that? And by teaching them some real simple things, like breasts are very delicate, you shouldn't, you know, grab them strongly and pull on them. It's not healthy, you know, whatever. So there's ways of communicating, and it might have to be a separate class just for the boys who are heterosexual, a class for girls that are heterosexual, and maybe a class for also people who consider themselves gay, because sexuality is different. And these sex educators would have to have benevolence and relaxation and just be really open. And it's, again, not graphic. You're not sitting there demonstrating how to do things, but you're having an honest human conversation, letting kids know the importance of not being rushed, of not doing it the way they see it done in the movies or pornography, that there is sensitivity, there is delicate tissues to be aware of, and how to become a sensitive, loving, kind, considerate lover. These things, I think, are really crucial, and they're being left out, and it's causing a lot of damage in the long run to the functionality of
That's also
people.
Must be the difference between the gourmet relationship and the drive-through, because we also have drive-through sex.
Absolutely.
We have
a
McDonald's
lot of
sex.
drive-through sex.
Yeah.
And whether or not parents are happy that kids are getting educated, just look at music videos. That's how your kids are learning how to have sex, through the music videos. And if you look at what's going on in music videos, it's not very sensual, it's not very respectful, there's not a lot of slowness, it's very quick, it's intense, it's very pornographic in a violent sort of sense. And it's teaching kids that that's what sex is. And unfortunately, recently I had a friend whose child is in jail because he's 17 and has charges for having sexually assaulted a young girl in a party. And this kid is amazing. I know this young man, but his only sex education is rap videos, is the music videos. This is a direct result of poor education. That's all it is. It's kids that are not getting the other side of the picture, because they are getting a picture. They're just not getting the whole picture. Okay. We need to be able to communicate these things to kids, and also we need to communicate about pleasure, because sexuality, in its greatest, say, most exalted form, actually enables a human being to function at its full potential when sexuality is expressed healthily. And we need to show kids these healthy examples. And I'm not saying show them pornography, because that's not a healthy example. But we need to actually teach them that sexuality is healthy, that pleasure is a birthright, and that taking care of their own sexual needs is really important.
Some cultures, when you come naked in the room as a child, they say, like, be ashamed, or, huh? Shame, shame, they say. Shame, shame. That's what I heard. So, why are we so afraid of this pleasure?
It's an imprint. It's something it's a learned behavior, because if you really look at young kids, they don't have it. We're not born with shame. We learn shame. So thankfully we can unlearn shame. And shame serves no purpose. What we want to teach instead of shame is ownership and responsibility. So here I have this pleasure body, and I understand the boundaries. Adults shouldn't be touching me. I shouldn't be self-pleasuring in public places. Just understanding kind of good social behaviors, really. And then also being able to discern right relationship and right timing. These are the things we want to teach kids, not shame, because we're teaching kids shame purely to keep them safe. That's really the intent in the long run. I was lucky where I had parents that didn't shame me, but they definitely taught me boundaries, because I was that kind of child that would publicly just do whatever I wanted to do. And I had to learn early on, the world isn't all relaxed. So I don't need to shut down, but I need to actually go do this in the privacy of my own room. And adults should never touch me. If an adult touches me, to tell my parents right away. And that happened to me in grade 1. I was 6 years old, first day of school, and I was molested by the school teacher. She molested the whole classroom that day. And I went home and I announced it to my mother, and thankfully my mother had the woman fired. The next day was a different teacher. But that's because my parents taught me, say something. Now, out of the 30 kids that were molested, I was the only one who spoke up. And this is something very important that stayed with me, is that we're not teaching kids that what's okay and what's not okay in terms of real functionality.
Can I ask you what they did? What she did?
She went around and masturbated everybody. So,
on everybody?
all the children. Yeah.
You're kidding?
Not herself. She was touching all the kids' genitals. I don't know why. Why do people do things?
My God, that was a teacher in first grade?
Yes. So these experiences, they're not great, but you know, they happen. And if you properly contextualize, where the kids understand, actually that wasn't okay, I'm going to speak up, the experience didn't stay in my body. I didn't carry it as a shameful thing, because I understood that it wasn't okay and I didn't take it on.
But maybe somebody else in your classroom did.
But no other child was taught that. I think in these cases, because I think back to my upbringing and my conditioning, and I was always told, make a lot of noise, scream, hit. Like, I was told what to do if these things would happen. And I was attacked as a young girl. I was 12 years old, and an adult tried to rape me. And he threatened my life and the whole thing. And in the moment that he touched me, I just, even though he threatened to kill me if I made a sound, I screamed the living bejesus. And I ran like a crazy woman. And throughout my teen life, I was again attacked a few other times. And I punched, I broke noses, I had this reaction that was instinctual. And what we're doing to human beings now is we're breaking the instinct. But if you look at any animal, an instinctual animal, they will not let you hurt them. They'll react. But when you break someone's instinct, and that's what shame does, you can't react anymore. There's no more self-preservation. You just stop. And so if we can teach the kids very early on that their instincts are good, and it's okay to bite and scream and you know, make noise and get unhappy and run, do it, you have a lot more chance. Now, of course, there's situations where that just can't happen, but as best as we can to say it's okay, and this is not okay, these behaviors are not okay, and this is what you do. You scream, or you don't let yourself be alone, or you just educate. And it's really, unfortunately, that we live in a world like this. But because it's like this, then we need to give the kids an advantage instead of taking it away from them.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if you have experienced as a child something bad happening to you, you think a teacher can help, like, or a classroom can help, or a book can help, or is there any tools for a teacher? Because we hear also that at least one of your children in primary school is being abused at home. At least one. Sometimes 3 in your classroom that you don't know anything about. So what can we do as a teacher?
It would be really ideal to even have a beautiful little simple book that would explain, like, okay, so you had this experience, it's not okay. And then taking the child not just to a place where they're functional with the trauma, because that's what our society does. We're very good at this.
What are we good at?
We're good at taking someone from a traumatic experience to becoming a victim of that trauma. Mm-hmm. We say, okay, that wasn't okay, this was wrong, and then we kind of stay in this victim place. And we don't yet have in place a way for the child to understand that that moment in their life doesn't have to define their entire life. And there's ways of re-imprinting the cellular memory, so just gentle ways of doing that. And understanding that there's a whole other side to them that was untouched, nothing was taken from them, and these things have yet to come out and emerge. But what's difficult is when there's abuse in place, and you're so in your formative years, is you're limbically being confused in the imprinting. Something gorgeous and natural becomes frightening and horrible. And that imprint will have to be re-imprinted at some point. And it cannot really be from a teacher or a parent. It's going to happen, A, by them choosing and recognizing they need it for themselves, and B, them manifesting a partner that can re-imprint that moment because they're loving and respectful.
But when you are misused,
often you attract the same.
Yeah.
So that's why I said that this manual, it would be great to say what happened wasn't okay, and this is how we're going to move you forward.
It should be something like
it's lacking, and it's lacking. We're insensitive because I said earlier, being a sexual social creature is at the fundamental level of being a human being, and it's the least spoken to and least addressed in our society. We do not have the resources or interest at this point. But we're starting to discover that in order to really express your full potential as a human being, that means your full intelligence, your full creativity, and just your birthright of feeling good, these things are related to what's going on in the pelvis of the person. So if there's trauma pelvically, it affects the brain, and it affects the areas of the brain where this is happening. So it's very important to start to recognize sexuality and psychology, they're not separate. They're really not separate. And that's what my PhD was on, was looking at the psychosexual health of a human being and what the impact is, and the fact that they're inseparable. Yeah.
Wow.